Thank you for staying with us on Citizen Extra as we take you across the country following news as it breaks. Here in Nairobi, a postmortem is underway on the body, of course, of the late IEBC official who was found murdered. Joining us now is Hassan Mugambi. He's live for us from the Lee Funeral Home and should be bringing us more next. There you are. Hassan, good morning. What can you tell us?
Very much. And we are here at the Lee Funeral Home where the autopsy on the body of Chris Msando, the ICT boss at the IEBC, who was found, whose body was found Saturday at in Kikuyu area of Kiambu County, is here, and the autopsy has begun. We have already seen the homicide team from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, and they are carrying out to find some of the leads, if at all any, that will lead them now to try to get and try to establish who exactly was behind the killing of Msando and why they did so. So the autopsy will be conducted together with homicide team and the government pathologist, as well as a pathologist that is have been seconded to the team by the family, as well as we also got wind of information that IEBC will be seconding a lawyer who will be attached to the team that is probing the circumstances that are surrounding the mysterious death of the IEBC official. So we are here waiting for any results that will be coming out of the pathology room of the Lee Funeral Home. Remember, it is a death that has caused a stir in as far as the IEBC is concerned. Yesterday we saw Mofole Chebukati saying that they will do all in their powers to ensure that justice has prevailed, not just to the family of Msando, but also to the IEBC and the Kenyan voter in general. Anne.
Hassan, thank you for that. We'll leave it there and let you follow up on the same, but I'm joined in studio by two lawyers, Dunstan Omari and Sandra Ochola. Let me speak to you both briefly about this sort of forensics that will be taken by the homicide team, government pathologist, a private doctor as well, and the IEBC lawyer. Perhaps I can start with you, Dunstan. In terms of evidence collection and this being a crucial stage, what exactly is it that from a legal perspective one would be keen on in terms of how this postmortem is conducted?
Well, the first issue that I want to pass my condolences to the family of the late Msando. I remember we sat here on this television. We did a debate with him.
Right.
It is very, very sad that he met his death the way he met it. So, going to your question, what the police are looking for is who, the first thing. Fingerprints will nail to whoever had a body contact, either with the vehicle or with a person. Number two, then it will come out clear after they have identified this person what was the motive behind the murder. The cause of death is very clear. The pathologist will confirm that the cause of death is by blunt objects like that. But are there gunshots? Are there other weapons used on the body? So that will come out in the postmortem report. Lastly, is the scene of the murder. They will investigate that scene to know whether there was a confrontation, who were there. There are quite a number of evidences they will check. For example, if there was rape, the pubic hair will be picked to identify the rapist. There are very many issues that they will gather, so that once this matter is brought to court, definitely there is rumors that 3 people already have been arrested, so that we are likely to see more being arrested, people who had a contact with this guy. The bigger question will be why.
Yeah, Johnson, just stay with me a little bit, because of course this isn't something that is, everyday knowledge, if you like, for the general public in terms of evidence collection. More often than not, what we hear from prosecutors, private prosecutors, etc., is the shoddy nature in which evidence is collected or preserved, or just the nature of the investigation. And so, from that standpoint, what would be crucial at this stage in terms of the collection of physical evidence and the probing of the injuries on his body?
And what is there that is very clear, if the murderers were professional murderers, they normally destroy every iota of evidence. For example, they will not handle the murder, the execution, with their bare hands. They will be having gloves, they will be covering every trail that is there. The weapons of murder will not be available. So it will depend on the level of the people who did that. And the level of the people who did that will demand that the police also put a higher level of personnel, quality in terms of personnel and quality in terms of resources to be applied in the investigation. So the CID Forensic Lab is complete now. Let us hope results will be done. The lawyers are waiting to defend whoever will be brought to court. So, as lawyers, it is upon the government to get sufficient evidence that nails the killers to that. In most occasions, normally, the killers who are brought to court are people we call the decoys, the fall guy boys. So that, if that lady that it is alleged was with the Msando, and the story of a love triangle comes up, we are likely to see people who are girl boyfriends of this lady being arraigned to court, if it is a way to cover up the story. But this matter having taken a serious national discourse, I wish the proceedings of this matter could proceed within the next 2 weeks. It is likely that this matter will be concluded 4 or 5 years from now. That time, the public attention, citizens will have forgotten to continue covering this story, and that is the time the judgment normally comes that there is no sufficient evidence. So it is upon the DPP to properly direct the investigators. They have the capacity, they have the personnel, they have to look further than what normally they do. But most of the cases come to court and they are dismissed for failure to attain the required standard of the burden of proof being proved beyond any reasonable doubt.
Sandra, let me get comment from you on the same in regard to evidence collection at this stage. What, from your perspective as a lawyer, evidence teams or homicide would be looking for? And of course, IBC has been very keen from the beginning, saying that they would be seconding their own private lawyer to this particular investigation. So, you being a legal mind, in this instance, what is a lawyer looking for, especially in regard to the very high threshold of evidence that a court would require?
I believe that, as you said, and as Danson has said, this is an ongoing conversation that is now taking a national perspective. And I think, as we've mentioned before, is the fact that indeed it is tragic, and I think that is one thing that everyone is saying, even the Commission is saying, and anyone who's given a statement about it is talking about it in that manner. That being said, again, one of the things that people are now talking about is the fact that indeed the institutions are coming up, and we are seeing something happening towards giving us some facts or some realities as to exactly what happened. And one thing that I think I've emphasized before is the fact that as taxpayers, I think it's important for us again to put more faith in our institutions as far as very important issues like what we are currently seeing is concerned. And part of what we are dealing with, like we have seen and was mentioned initially, is the fact that as a country we are now investing more in the police to ensure that they're able to gather evidence, that we are able to come up with more solutions to the issues we are facing. But that does not, of course, speak against instances where indeed there are stories where, like the lawyer has said, you have cases that are not brought to conclusion, you have suspects who have been put to jail and they're innocent. You have such instances do occur. However, moving forward with this one, I think what from a legal perspective, what they'll be looking at is issues of what we call mens rea. What the intention was, exactly who are the culprits, were there any middlemen involved, and what was the motive ideally, because that is what the country is waiting for. What was the motive of the murder? And I think the sooner this is decided upon, the sooner this is revealed, then I think a number of issues and a number of questions will have been laid to rest.
All right, let's shift gears now to opinion polls, and the last opinion poll results before Tuesday's general election have been released, and of course you have seen them. The short of the long being InfoTrack has placed Raila in the lead with 49% versus Uhuru Kenyatta's 48%. I think there's a 2% of respondents who were undecided. Ipsos has, basically flipped that. Raila at 44% and Uhuru at 47%, with a 5% margin of those saying that they are unsure. And let me bring in my entire panel now. Of course, we've been talking to Danston and Sandra, but Mark Bichachi is also with us. He's a political communication strategist. Dr. Sam Kamau, political analyst, stays with us, and Benny Simburo, who's a political analyst, joining us this hour. So good morning to you all. Let me start by getting a general comment from you, Mark, on these polls. Their believability, do you think either one of these resonates with you and is in a roundabout region of what may be true?
You know, the funniest thing about Kenyan polls is they say everything and nothing in the same sentence. It's an amazing feat of confusion. But that being said, the truth of the matter is this: when you give a 5% error of margin and every one of those polls is within that 5%, then you're basically saying that that there could be a 10% difference between the candidates, and then there could be a no difference between the candidates, and that does not make sense.
Which is not the same thing.
Yes, which is not the same thing. So it's misleading actually. At this point, you would expect that the polls would actually tighten and would actually make more sense. What is interesting though, and what I find interesting, is a couple of weeks ago we had a prediction here and we said that a lot of the undecideds would decide to side with either Jubilee or NASA, and we are seeing that happen, which means that we could probably have a first round victory where we'll not look at a face-off. Now, given those facts and given how tight they're saying this race would be, then I think it's time we start telling the country that if an incumbent is in the lead in most of the polls, if the opposition cannot garner above 10% above the incumbent, then history has shown us across actually Africa that then most likely we're looking at an Uhuru Kenyatta win.
Okay, that's a bold assertion. Dr. Kamau, your thoughts on that? That if there isn't a 10% difference based on opinion polls, that an incumbency is likely to return?
And I think I would want to say that opinion polling is supposed to be a science, but in Kenya it has become more of an art. The art of an art of manipulation.
It's qualitative and not quantitative.
It's an art of manipulation. In the sense that we are getting different polls, and you can almost predict by the way what each pollster is likely to say. And where we have found ourselves is that we are not able to read much from the polls, because they are all telling us that the race is tight. But then, looking for a scientific explanation for the kind of shift perhaps we have seen with some of the polls, or what they have been consistently telling us. And I think part of the challenge is, I know that there are people who are in the business, of course, of trying to manipulate public opinion because of trying to create what you call a bandwagon effect. If this is the person who is perceived to be winning, and the polls, of course, keep reinforcing that, then there's a likelihood that could be used to help the undecided people, of course, decide for that particular candidate. But on the other hand, we have seen that whenever a poll is released, another one will come out soon after to almost counter that particular poll, and therefore leave the people in confusion. The good thing is, 5 days to the elections, I think the real poll will be on Tuesday, where people will get a chance to express themselves. I basically have a problem and with all these particular polls or the pollsters because of what the results keep telling us. You can just tell that some of the things don't make any sense when you look at, and by the way, after the elections, they will come and tell us that we were actually right because we told you it was a close race. There were some people who were undecided and therefore they decided to vote in this particular way, and therefore they still try to justify them. But like we saw in the US election, the pollsters generally got it wrong. We also saw it in 2013 where polls were telling us one thing, but what was the outcome was something completely different. And I think the pollsters have had a chance to try and rebuild or regain their credibility by telling us perhaps trying to show us that this is a scientific process. But from what we have seen, first in terms of interpretation of these polls, or in terms of the pollsters trying to justify why we are seeing a particular shift in a particular region, because we know when a poll is released today, it is mostly influenced by certain events that have happened in the last couple of days when the poll is being conducted, which is likely to influence public opinion. But what we have seen in our country, at times you can't actually quite predict, and this happened in 2007, it happened in 2013, and it's happening right now. My hunch is to generally ignore, of course learn what you can learn from the polls. Is showing us there is a possibility of around 1 win, but I think these are figures that have been well manipulated to push a specific narrative, and therefore I would ask citizens to be a bit more cautious in how they receive this and know that they will still get a chance to express themselves on the ballot. The last thing I would want to say on this, it is still wrong to keep referring to the former provinces when you are trying to report the polls. I know there are certain dynamics within each county. We have 47 counties, and there is a possibility that despite the fact that Turkana and Bomet or Kericho are in Rift Valley, they are likely to vote differently. So when you put it together and tell us that one has 65% support in Rift Valley and the other one that's 2%, it doesn't give us the complete picture. There is also a reason other than perhaps Central Province, which is likely to be more homogeneous. Mombasa, for example, I am very sure we are going to get a few surprises from the rural counties and maybe the counties that are more in the town areas. That is, I'm talking about Mombasa and Kilifi.
But having said that, Daktari,
yes,
just pause there because and we all see your general disgust with this poll.
In this art of public manipulation,
okay.
Polls.
Okay.
Yes.
Having said that, though, Mark has made a rather bold assertion that if there's an incumbent in the race and the opposer doesn't have a 10% lead, then the incumbent returns. What do you think of that?
Well, in a sense, of course, because you can see between Sunday and yesterday, I think yesterday we had 3 polls coming out. There was another one on Sunday. All 3 of them, 3 out of the 4 polls indicate that the incumbent is leading, and of course that says something. I said, remember, this will speak to some undecided people and see if he is the person who is winning. I think I would rather support this particular person. The other thing is building enthusiasm within the supporters of the incumbent. When you see the polls predict that you're likely to win, they are more likely to come out to vote. In therefore looking at these polls, they tend to favor, or they are favoring the incumbent is President Uhuru Kenyatta, and in that sense then I can agree with Mark Bichache.
Bernice, your thoughts on this poll?
I think we should respect the polls because they give a direction in terms of the voting. So as much as there's a lot of people are disagreeing with the polls, people need to understand that there's a change of dynamics every day, and that's why you're seeing the polls are increasing and decreasing in some instances. So going back to what Dr. said about the 2013 polls that did not reflect what to the elections, this is basically because people participate in the polls but don't actually vote. If you look at the 2017 elections, most people are actually going to their rural homes, and probably that's not the place they took their voters card. So it will definitely affect the way the elections turnout will be. So it's just the case as the US election. Clinton had the popular vote, but he didn't have electoral vote. So I think polling, the polls are there to direct us, but of course there will be changes in terms of methodology and all that.
And to what extent then do you think where people end up voting or not turning out really impact the numbers that we're seeing? Because I mean, in terms of undecided respondents, polls are putting it at 2%, 5%. Do you think it causes that significant a sway if you were to rank it, to give it a percentage?
I think it does because as the nature of Kenyans, they are last-minute people, and you'll find so many Kenyans, even as at now, are very undecided. It's just like they are collecting their voters' cards. They were waiting for the last day to actually go and take their voters' cards. So the undecided margin, I don't think it's something.
We'll wake up on August the 8th.
At 5:30
a.m. and say,
yes.
I feel the need to chip in there. Who was polled? Is it people who are 18 and above, that is eligible voters? Are you talking about registered voters? Are you talking about registered voters who also intend to vote? There is a difference, because that is likely to give us the indication where, in terms of the discrepancies we see in the numbers. If you have just targeted people who are 18 and above and are not registered voters, it doesn't tell us anything for the poll. If you're talking about registered voters, but who do not necessarily intend to vote, so there should be that particular question: do you intend to vote in the coming elections? That is what is likely to give us a clearer picture of where the state of the race, and they don't necessarily give us direction, but just an indication where are we today, because there are dynamics that happen every day that are likely to help. But to disagree with her, suggesting that majority of people or a good number of people are still undecided, I can tell you it's only 5 days to the elections. People have most likely made up their mind. It's only some people who are shaky. I know I'm leaning NASA, but I can be convinced to vote for Jubilee, or I'm leaning Jubilee, but I can be convinced to vote for NASA, and I think or to vote for this particular side. And that is where you see their campaign efforts targeting the battlegrounds that are, or the swing counties that are seen to be shaky, and therefore you want to make sure you consolidate that support or help the people who are leaning one way or the other to fully make up their mind.
Marco, what do you think of that, especially in terms of the margins that we have been given by pollsters between 2 and 5%? Is there still an undecided vote 5 days to the polls?
To be honest with you, the argument that some people will not show up is faulty in terms of polling, because polling is random. It's supposed to factor in the natural number of people who will not show up. So that argument quite does not hold water. But on the amount of 2 to 5%, I think there are undecided, yes, but they're not undecided in the sense that they do not have a choice at all. Actually, the undecidedness is being torn between NASA and Jubilee, because from the time they were 12% undecided till now, we've not seen a jump for Ekuru Okot, we've not seen a jump for Wainaina or any of the other candidates. The reality of the matter, these undecideds are torn between NASA and Jubilee. And the reality of the matter, and I have a feeling that they're actually decided, it is just that their decision is unpopular within the circumstances within which they speak. So for example, a Jubilee supporter in Kisumu would definitely feel pressed to say, I am undecided. But the reality of the matter, 5 days to this election, the stakes are quite high. I think a lot of people are decided, and even then, even if the undecided decided to hold back their votes, they would only serve to bring the threshold to above 50% for whoever wins.
Dunstan, your thoughts on undecided? Are you decided?
I am already decided. And
how have no?
Very decided. Let me tell.
And what are they undecided on? I beg your pardon. What are they undecided on, and what would make these decisions concrete now with 5 days to go?
I'll give a practical example. I've been in this political campaign, actively involved in campaigns for a parliamentary seat where I come from in West Mugirango constituency. There is the commercial aspect of voting that is going to come the last day to voting. Money will decide. Whoever will give people money, they'll vote for him. That one, the pollsters have never captured that. That the essence of money, the last night, it is called that is when people make up their decision. They are quietly telling you that is when they are waiting for them to be paid to go and vote. That percentage of the voters who wait to be paid constitute a huge chunk of money. Number two, the day also to voting, the night before voting, there is what is called the tribal, clan, village, something positioning of what are we going to do. The instructions are going to come from the perceived centers of instructions. For example, when we look at the Kalenjin vote, the tectonic plates happening in Bomet, Mandago and the others, the directions on where those people are going to vote will come out the last night. We saw this in Kericho, where Kanu was in a senatorial post. Kanu was ahead at night. Everybody changed. What happened that night? Jubilee carried the day. So that is the night pollsters have never understood really what happens to Kenyans that night.
You think money is going to influence this election?
There are 4 issues that determine that night. 1, money. 2, tribal or village directions from the people who control the voters. 3, it is a question of, will people wake up to vote? People will have decisions, but will they wake up to vote? If they don't wake up to vote, voter turnout will determine that. Lastly, what is the effect of rigging in this election? In 2013, 2007, rigging was a factor that determined the election. Even did the IBC will leave to the belief that there will be no rigging. Therefore, that will also be factored in this election. So in my own view, Mark has said that from the pollsters, from the opinion, it looks that the incumbent is leading. I have a very contrary position that to me, the positioning of this election, whoever will win by over 56%. It is not a tight race. If Uhuru Kenyatta will win, he will win by 56% and above. So if Raila Odinga will win, he will do that margin. Because the night of decisions, the big night of knives is coming.
Benny, your knives are coming. Figuratively, I must be careful. I must be careful. Figuratively speaking. Having said that, what are your thoughts, Benny, in terms of the impact of money on the polls? I mean, it's sad that we're still talking about votes for sale, you know, even in this electoral cycle, and there has been this sort of perception that the electorate, I beg your pardon, is coming of age, almost not to sanitize it though, but you will hear people say you can take their money, but you know where your vote is going, and that sort of talk going around. What are your own perceptions about the money factor on the eve of the elections, and this being an electoral offense, the importance of the various institutions that are charged with safeguarding the poll, in IEBC in particular, being able to forestall anything like that?
I would say money is it's a key factor. People are actually accepting the money here, but I think also the Kenyan people are also changing. Money is not on everything, but I agree with him that money will of course affect, but I don't think it's an absolute situation where money will change their votes or their interests. So I think we need to be careful. We are growing to democracy, and I think in future we'll be having people voting according to interest and issues-based voting. So I think that is changing, and yeah, for maybe this election, and maybe just to go back to my opinion question, for the 5 undecided, I think people are looking at the both parties. If it's NASA and Jubilee, these people have been in government for the longest time, and they're in situations where even though you go if you vote any of their sides, it will not make any difference, and that's why they are undecided. And then they're also looking at, if I vote the other 5, it will not change anything. So they're probably weighing all these before the actual date. So I know, I accept the polls, and we have to respect them. So I think they're actually genuine. So yeah.
I don't know that we have to respect them. Not that I am a disrespectful person, or that we have to accept them, but it is your opinion, and your opinion we respect, certainly. Okay, Mark, let me come to you on the same on what Danson has said. What influence is this between 2% and 5% on the eve of the elections? And do you agree with his assessment? It's money, tribal affiliations, as a sort of kind of king village demagogue speaking over where one should vote. You're laughing, but this may be very much reality on the ground, you know, and whether people will actually wake up and go out and vote.
I would agree except to disagree on one point, the money point. I think the money factor would have been played out by now, because money has been distributed already and it's playing out even now. So that 5% I don't think is going to be convinced by money. However, the influence of family and cultural background on election night cannot be discounted. It is powerful, it is an emotive thing, and I can predict for you for free that the night towards elections, people will get messages where they'll be told our entire village will be consumed by hellfire if we don't vote a particular way. That will definitely happen. It has happened before and it will happen again. Now, the reality of the matter is, if you look at the trends globally around how people have been pushed to vote, it's always been a message of fear and the phobia of the other side. You know, the American election was not a Trump win. It was a win against Mexicans coming into America. It was a win against towards Islamophobia. That's what it was. Brexit, it's the same thing. It was a fear of keeping our jobs against these people outside towards the Russian side of Europe, Eastern Europe, who are coming into the UK. So the fact is, politicians will definitely try and come up with narratives on election night that will spark fear, and suddenly the person who was at the village and wasn't going to vote will wake up and vote. And then let's not discount the fact that you wake up and there is no one having breakfast with you because everyone has gone out to vote. You know, that's the reality of what is going to happen. So this 5% might indeed be convinced on election night, based not so much on money, because there is no distribution mechanism for money on election night, but definitely based on cultural and family ties, and your father showing up and saying, if you are part of this family, you will remember you are a Luya first or a Kikuyu first or whatever first. That is what most likely will happen. It is sad, but that's the reality.
Yeah, but you know, if only we could rise above that and say, okay, but the ballot is secret, you know. It is a secret ballot, so you can say what you want, but it's a secret ballot at the end of the day. Dr. Kamau, your thoughts on that, on Monday night and the impact of Monday night on the Tuesday poll?
I think what's likely to happen between now and actually Monday night, money is a factor. I think there are candidates who have learned that on that particular evening, that is on the eve of the vote, especially for the lower levels, NC and MP, they are normally very well organized networks that help to distribute things like unga and sugar that help people to make up their minds. The other thing we're likely to see is propaganda. Between now and even when the campaigns officially close on Saturday, there will be a lot of propaganda and lies or fake news going around to try and, of course, make a final appeal or push to the people to go out and vote. The other key thing, and this is the most critical, is the mobilization or the turnout. Depending on how the political parties are organizing what you call their ground game, that is being organized, being able to get the people to come out and vote, that will be the most critical factor, because, and we have been saying consistently, forget the opinion polls, turnout will determine, in a closely contested race, turnout will determine who is likely to carry the day, and it depends on which side is more organized in terms of getting their people to actually come out and vote. And I hope the political parties, even as they continue campaigning and combing the grounds, I hope they are also putting the necessary machinery in place to make sure that they have the proper agents in place, they have the mobilization teams or machinery in place to make sure that they are going to get effective or maximum turnout in their particular strongholds.
All right, we're just about to take a short break, but before that, Sandra, your thoughts on these 5 days and what could impact the numbers that we're getting from pollsters?
And want to echo what Sam said initially about sticking to the science of it. So I think our the information that we've had right now, the discussion we've had right now, goes back to the art of the polling, and I think perhaps we should urge the pollsters to conduct a scientific study on the undecideds, so that we have factual information on where they are undecided, what are they waiting for, what are they looking forward to. That being said, one thing I know about Kenyans is that there's a wide gap between our knowledge and our doing. We know exactly what we desire in terms of our visions for the country, our visions for the vote, but then when it comes to doing, it becomes a totally different issue. And then most times we tend to say, a lot of pretense goes around, we tend to say what we think the other person wants to hear. If you look at the Ipsos study, for example, one of the issues that was asked is where will you be voting, and majority of the people said they'll be voting where they live. And that is because they have an interest in the area, and yet you see the contrary information on the news where people are moving from that area. But then one thing I liked about the Ipsos survey was that in terms of asking about which candidate are you going to vote for, they tried to make it a very private affair where they handed over the gadgets to the individuals and told them to put it on their own. And for me, that goes to a great extent in terms of validating what they have gotten, and also now trying to support the information that we've had over the past 3 years, because we'll also be doing ourselves a disservice as analysts if you're only going to focus on the opinion polls that we've had over the past 1 week or over the past 1 month. There's a lot of history that has taken place in terms of opinion polls, and over the past 3-5 years there's data that you can rely on to see the trends moving forward. So I do agree that there could be a number of factors to consider moving forward, but then I'll also agree with my panelists that what is going to determine this election is voter turnout. Majority have said that this election period was already won at the registration process. Maybe not, it's out there to be seen, but then I do agree that voter turnout will be very important, and so supporters for either side, it's important that they come out and they have their voice heard.
Dunstan, and before you speak, Dunstan, I think it's just important to say again, and even though we are belaboring the point at this point, but given the nature of the country that we live in, your expression in regards to the Night of Knives really is a figure of speech and nothing more than a figure of speech. Dunstan.
Thank you very much for making that clear to everybody. 3 issues. One, let us look at this election that is coming on 8 from a global perspective. Globally, no incumbent has survived. All of them have been thrown out for the last 2 years, from America, from Britain, from all over, even Somalia here. We come to the political parties. Jubilee Party, almost every incumbent was swept out, save those who rigged themselves according to the others into their position. ODM, almost all the incumbents were thrown out, except those ones that were given tickets because they were relatives of the owners of ODM. The only people who survived is Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, because they were never exposed to an election. So in my position, based on that reality that incumbents, this is the time to sweep all incumbents, there is a possibility, a very strong possibility, that Uhuru Kenyatta will lose to Raila Odinga. That is one theory. Number two people. My good Wakil is telling me we have seen a lot of people moving. I'll tell you for free that people registered where they are going to vote. The law that required people to register a place to be a voter after you have stayed there for some time or you own property was amended. Nowadays you can go and register in West Mugrango while you have never stayed there. The people who are transported by governors, by MCAs, they are the people you are seeing moving out of Nairobi, others coming to Nairobi. Let nobody think that the people are moving because of suppression of votes. Those people are registered the whole country. The third theory that I want to dispel is a theory about the night, the dark night. Why I said that is so clear that people are saying that people have decided. The theory is very clear. Only a dead woman or a dead man cannot change his mind. Therefore, the people who are decided today, when they reach hope, what man calls the village cultural, those guys demagogues, and you find that the pressure, you cannot sustain your opinion that you had, you change up your mind. I know very well that only 20 to 30% of Kenyans have a permanent mind that cannot change. When we start with that, that is why in my own analysis, the night when people will decide who they will vote is Monday night. What we have now here is purely cosmetic, aesthetic, centered to attract a certain constituency. The reality is Monday night.
We're taking a break. We're back with more on Citizen Extra after this.